Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. We bring you the right information to empower you, the SME entrepreneur. On this special series, BSE presents SME Success Stories. We're bringing you India's most innovative businesses and ideas. Two such companies in focus tonight. First up is Global Space, and on the other side of a short break, Iris Business Solutions is in focus. It's not very often that we talk to a listed company which is in the pure play tech space, but we are in conversation with one tonight. Global Space is a listed tech company that works very closely in future technologies. I spoke to them about finding the right people who understand such future technologies, as well as what some of the expansion plans are this time. Krishna, thank you very much for speaking with us here on the show and really talking about your business. First of all, we don't speak very often to SMEs which are listed, so congratulations on the listing, and we'll come and talk about that. But I want to take a step back and talk about Global Space, talk about your company, what your journey has been very briefly. What do you want our viewers to know about it?
Thanks for having me here. And Global Space Technology was incepted almost 8 years back. Primarily, we wanted to be a tech company when we started, and it has been an evolution for Global Space per se. When we started, we wanted to focus on Salesforce enablement, build technology solutions for Salesforce, and with a specific focus on healthcare per se. And from there, we kept evolving our solution, and we built something for pharma sales reps. From there, we thought, why not cover the entire ecosystem? So we went and created tech solution for pharma channel.
Sure.
Then doctors being the integral part and the most important part of healthcare ecosystem, we built solution for doctors. And today, as we speak, basically we are on a 360-degree health tech proposition from our consumers' perspective.
Okay.
And as far as Global Space goes, we've been, since our inception, we've been kind of focusing on innovation and growing our business in the tech and health space.
Sure.
One of the primary thing is that since we understand the domain well, and we can figure out that how technology can be leveraged to do things better to benefit the end consumer. That has been the key point for Global Space.
Sure.
And last year, we did get ourselves listed on...
Okay, so you describe yourself as a health tech company. You say you're in the health tech space versus most companies which say they look at med tech. So are there any differences that our viewers should know about? And plus, you're saying that this is an industry perhaps which not a lot of people have really studied. So as someone who's been in this space, as a leader in this space, what are the opportunities specifically for businesses? You started this interview by saying, we decided to look at doctors because that's the sort of subsection of this market that really needs technology, but where are the specific opportunities?
So I'll give you some data points which would interest you, and it's kind of available freely.
Yeah.
See, if you look at doctor-patient ratio in India, I think 1:1700 is the ratio. But what is more interesting is that almost 80% of this doctor population is centered around cities. And our population is there in the tier 2 and tier 3 and the rural market. Now, when we say that the doctor-patient ratio is 1:1700, in reality, it is even worse because for the majority of the population, your ratio might be as abysmal as 1:4000 or 4500.
Sure.
So you have tremendous pressure on the healthcare providers. Wherein it would be a very common scene if you go to any rural market that one good doctor seeing more than 150, 200 patients.
Sure.
Now, it's very difficult for a human mind to do justice to so many patients, and that's kind of that's not right from an overall ecosystem perspective. So with technology, you can create a platform which can kind of bridge these gaps with the given.
So you're saying that rural India perhaps is where the biggest opportunity lies, and that's echoed by many of your peers as well. Are you present right now in markets outside of cities?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. So we see, as I told you, as an organization, Global Space, we started working with the pharma companies to start with. We had our own share of learnings there, and then we moved to the, I would say, pharma channel. So, I mean, if I look at healthcare per se, you have two critical parts. One is the healthcare provider, other is the medicines. And in both the segments, we are kind of approaching in a very different manner, and we want to reach out to the tier 2 and tier 3 markets in both the segments.
Okay.
When we are building our platform, software product platform, we are adhering to all the global standards as far as the data privacy is concerned. Because though it kind of ends up increasing the cost a little bit, but it's worth it, because we are not only focused on Indian market, we would like these products to be used globally as well. And I think in Europe you have a GDPR guidelines, so we are kind of maintaining our entire software products with respect to those guidelines.
So let's talk about Ayushman Bharat and the opportunity that it really presents, not just for you as a company, but for the industry. If you can sort of talk to our SMEs about what is the potential for business and revenues really coming out of this massive initiative, if I can call it that.
Yeah, so I think the sheer scale of Ayushman Bharat is so exciting. Like one is going to, it's the largest health insurance scheme globally. I think more than the population of many countries we can imagine. I think the scheme per se looks very, very exciting, and what needs to be seen as is the execution part. And for a scheme of this magnitude to work, government would require multiple SME partners to pitch in there and do their bit. And I think technology is going to play a major role in the entire initiative. So when you're looking at connecting so many families and giving them the benefit of healthcare, ultimately you need to be connecting the multiple stakeholders of the healthcare ecosystem, which I'm sure government would be working on. But at the same time, I think what opens up as an opportunity for everybody in the healthcare ecosystem is that when you have such a large population coming into the ambit of getting healthcare per se, that itself is going to create a huge opportunity for everybody in the ecosystem.
All right. I want to now step away from healthcare and talk about two of the other verticals that you're involved in, which is BFSI and education, both of which booming in India, both of which presenting massive opportunities. Just walk us through your own plans there.
Yeah, so at Global Space, when we had started, we were since beginning focused on these three verticals. Only thing is healthcare, why it took the lead is because we saw a perceptible gap there. As far as BFSI is concerned, we have got two products which are again offshoot of our initial platform which we had built. And we are kind of working on the endpoint security space for the BFSI industry, and working with a couple of large banks there. That's a very, very niche segment which we have identified, and we kind of keep on evolving our product in that space. So we came up with something called MakeBot, which is a STEAM learning platform, wherein we have got robotics and AI education being imparted from standard third.
Okay.
And we are kind of K3 to K12 is what we are targeting. It's a independent vertical within Global Space. And the objective here is that, I mean, once you induct a child to the entire thinking and the, I would say, innovation domain through this means,
sure,
it is definitely going to help us create a lot of innovators from
sure,
India.
Okay.
So that's about MakeBot.
All right. Last question then. You are listed on the SME exchange. Listing is something that we talk about very often for SMEs here on the show. What was your experience like? Would you recommend it for everyone? How did you sort of prepare yourself for listing? Just very briefly talk to our viewers about that.
So I think it's all about your ambition. So if every SME wants to be a large enterprise, and if somebody is having that ambition, then one should definitely consider listing. And I would recommend at an early stage, because it's not just about fundraising. I think what it really helps you is to structure your organization, put your systems, processes in place, gets your corporate governance in place. So it's a lot easy to kind of change things when you're small, and manage that change when you're small. Then you becoming big, and then it becomes a pain.
Sure.
So we took almost an year since the time we decided to be on the SME exchange to actually get listed, because yes, when you start as an organization, you never think about many critical things which are needed when you grow up as an organization.
Sure.
So I think the process of listing helps you correct all those things from a basic documentation perspective. And post-listing, I think one really gets a good platform. So basically, it works a lot on the image of the organization.
Sure.
So I think your credibility goes up, and that's something which is very important for any organization.
Okay.
And you're prepared for the main board. So
all right, and which I understand you are going to be looking at soon.
Yes.
Krishna, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here today.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Time for a quick break. On the other side, Iris Business Solutions. What is the company up to? We'll give you a deep dive. That's coming up after the short break. To stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and you are watching BSE Presents SME Success Stories. Our second SME success story tonight is Iris Business Solutions. They're a company that has innovated in the technology space and works very closely, amongst others, with the RBI as well as stock exchanges. I spoke to them about data security concerns, a hot button topic right now, as well as their future growth plans this time. Mr. Swaminathan, thanks so much for taking the time to join us here on the show to talk about what you do at Iris, to talk about what the journey has really been like. So let's start by talking about Iris then, about what you want our viewers to know about the different verticals that you do and what really you are at the core.
Thank you for having me. So we do three things at Iris. We help regulators collect data. We help the regulated entities create data for submission to the regulator. And once the data is submitted, it needs to be analyzed. So we help with the analysis of data. So we call the divisions collect, create, and consume. Collect, helping regulators collect data. So for example, Reserve Bank of India collects data using our technology.
Sure.
24 regulators around the world collect data using our technology. The most advanced country in the world which uses our technology to collect data is Singapore. And then there are countries like Nepal that use our technology to collect data as well. Then we help businesses create data for submission to the regulator. That includes people like L&T, companies like L&T or Bajaj Finance, who create the GST filings using our software.
Great.
So we're a software products company.
Sure.
And then we help with the analysis of data. So the reason why you see a significant increase in truthful reporting of NPAs is because of our tools which help RBI analyze the data and makes it expensive for banks to hide NPAs, which they could do easily much earlier.
Okay, interesting. While you do hear a lot of companies, and while you do hear the tech industry talking about why they want to move away from ADM work to higher quality consulting work, not a lot of people have managed to do that, whereas you are in a very niche area. How did you perhaps early on decide that this was an industry or a market where you wanted to be based and where you could definitely make money?
So we were a services company. But one thing was very clear, with automation coming in. You've seen this latest news about China where the Chinese agencies now has robots, anchoring news channels, news programs. So automation is actually taking over. The moment automation is taking over, the first thing that happens is people lose jobs. So you either prepare for it or you wait for it to hit you and then you go out of business. So 4 years ago, we were a services company, and then we saw that automation was going to be coming in a big way and that we wouldn't be needed unless we transformed ourselves. Okay. So we moved from being a services company to being a products company. It's easier to do that if you're a small company It's more difficult to do that if you're a big company. It's like an elephant changing course midstream, whatever. It's very difficult to do that. If you're small, I think you can be nimble, you can actually reinvent yourself.
Sure.
We paid a price for it. We went through a period of making losses, we went through a huge amount of pain. But then we basically said, but this is where the world is headed. So if we stick it out, we will get there.
But you're a former journalist yourself.
I am.
And you're still a journalist, and you've set up this business. And I'm trying to understand what the transition has been. Maybe one or two highlights along the way that you want to tell our viewers about what this journey has been for you.
See, if you think about it, what does Reuters do? They push data. That's what they do. What does the Bloomberg do? They push data. What do? You turn the data into sentences and present it to people in this medium. So Reuters, if you take a look at it, it's a technology company. So the difference between technology and media has got blurred. You don't know what's technology, you don't know what's media. You don't know what starts where. As a consequence, it's really not a very big transition. So I used to work for Economic Times, I used to work for Business India. I would take data, analyze it, present it to people in a written form. When I did television, I would take the same data, present it to people in an audiovisual form. What I now do is I take the same data, push it out to people.
Let's also talk about the fact, and you were talking about automation and the fear that jobs perhaps could be lost with increasing automation. Two-part question. My first part is, how do you ensure that you are able to find the people who are understanding these technologies that you are then selling to your clients?
Tough. It's not very easy to find people. So what you do is you work with customers who want to invest in those technologies. So when we work with Singapore, for example, one of the earliest clients, we work with an understanding customer who said, this is where I want to go. And therefore you work with the customer who invests in you, knowing that you're able to do certain things for the customer. And not every technology is something you're very comfortable with from day one. You get it's a process of evolution. And when you get people in, so if you take a look at the company today, the average age is what, 25? Willing to learn. If you take the same set of people and put me there, I think it's very difficult for run a company like that. So if you want to evolve, I think you need the right age people. You need people of the right age, or the right age group, literally.
Of all the business verticals that you do have, which perhaps is getting you more revenue than the others? And is that the direction that you want to head in? What are some plans that you can leave us with?
In the past, we were working with regulators who needed platforms and technologies to be able to receive this data. Once that is done, the big action will actually be with the regulated who need to create data. And then the final action will actually be with people like you and others who need to consume the data. So in the past, 2/3 of our revenue came from what we call the collect segment, helping regulators collect data.
Sure.
Going forward, the real exciting area will be the area of create and consume. For example, I'll tell you, one of the most exciting projects we're actually working on is having financial content available to people across the country in the language of their choice.
Okay.
The reason why you don't run a program in Malayalam and Telugu and so on and so forth is because the transaction cost of creating the content is very, very high. But if you have automation available and you can provide content to people who are Malayalam speakers or Telugu speakers or Hindi speakers in the language of their choice, life becomes interesting. Today, the world of content is about delivering the content that you produce. So we're moving to a world of content on demand.
Sure.
Now, you don't know what you want to know until the time comes when you want to know that. So content on demand will work only if you have automation. So there's a lot of exciting work that we're doing in that area. Or the same thing works in Japanese or Chinese. So we're now saying, can we deliver to Japanese investors content about Indian companies in the Japanese language so that Japanese investment to India increases? Sure. That's huge. Sure. That's a huge possibility today.
For the work that you do, which is working with the RBI, for instance, working with the stock exchanges, for instance, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but how about data security, especially now that all these concerns over data leaks have happened globally? We're talking in the backdrop of everything that's happening with Aadhaar. How do you handle that question?
Paranoia. You have to be paranoid about data security. Okay. You can't afford to make a mistake even once. Mistakes will happen, but how you deal with the mistake is what sets the character of the company. See, there are two issues here. The biggest problem with data security is not so much technology as people. There are people who want to steal data. So there are people who will basically find technology loopholes to be able to do that. It's ultimately about people. And then there are two sets of people, internal and external. Internal, you put in place a discipline that ensures that nobody has access to data. And people who even remotely peek at the data, you literally chop the head off. Literally, you have to be paranoid about data security internally within the company. As far as external things concerned, people from outside coming to steal your data, that's where you put in ring fences. You fence it in such a manner that you are secure in some way or the other. The thief will always be ahead of you. But if you're cautious, any thief can pick your lock in the house. But if you're cautious about it and you take adequate precautions, the probability of that happening comes down.
Okay, so you're saying that you have multiple layers of security within the company to ensure that no one employee perhaps has access to all of the information?
So I'm the CEO of the company. I'm the founder of the company. I don't even try to see the data that comes through our system. I mean, that's the limit to which I actually go.
Sure.
So we do some work with RBI. Nobody has access to that room. So we do a lot of things in terms of security, which you keep the people out. You take the incentive out. You put, when as CEO, I basically say, I will not enter that room. Others don't enter that room.
Sure.
And it's not just the room. It's servers maintained outside, what do you do? Servers maintained inside, what do you do? It's asking somebody, kya ho raha wahan pe? You don't ask that question. You basically practice what you preach.
You're a company that's not present just in India, but across the world as well. What perhaps has been your USP? How do you see the fact that you as an Indian company have this global playing field?
Early movers.
Okay.
And more importantly, if you take a look at the world at large, there are people who focus on the collect segment. There are people who focus on what we call the create segment. And there are people who focus on the consume segment. We are the only company which focuses on the entire all the three segments, straddling the entire information supply chain. You know, I remember a meeting I had with the SEC many, many years ago. They said, what do we need to do to get XBRL to take off? That's an information standard that we actually work with. And I said, people need to use the data. For example, the Quota Committee in India has recommended that companies need to file in XBRL from April 1st. It's been gazetted, it's now happened. But how many media organizations in the country have even got ready for it? When it happens, people will get ready for it. It's going to transform the way you deliver data. We foresaw these things and we invested in it. It doesn't mean that you automatically get market leadership, but you invest in it, you prepare for it, and therefore you think you have a good chance of doing well afterward.
About 90% of the questions that we get on the Leaders of Tomorrow on the show is from people who say, how do I raise funds? They're struggling to raise funds. Most people are still looking at debt funding. Not a lot of people look at equity funding. As someone who's in such a specialized niche market, what has your own experience been?
Not easy.
Okay.
Not easy at all. Because when you are ahead of the curve, people don't know that it will take off. So for example, many people actually said this whole XBRL thing is nonsense. It will never happen.
Sure.
That's one thing you need to put up with.
Sure.
The second thing that people have a problem with is people basically say, you're too small. How big will the market be? And that's an important issue. Fortunately, we managed to attract investors who understood the business. Not everybody needs to understand the business. You need to have a set of people who understand the business. So if you look at the whole SME exchange and SMEs, very often they raise money from their partners, from people that they sell to, or from people that they buy from, who believe in the business.
Sure.
So it's not easy, but I think the story has to be told. I think the biggest issue that most smaller companies face is not paying attention to governance. If you pay attention to governance, I think raising money becomes that much easier. Way back in about 15 years ago, we basically said the idea of setting up this company is for achieving commercial success. So we had to focus on governance from day one. Okay. So as a company today, we have 7 directors on the board, of whom 4 are independent. And they're not rubber stamp directors, they're actually genuinely independent directors. As a company, we've had majority independent directors from the day we started. Because listing is not something that you wake up to on a certain day and say, I will do it in the next 3 months' time.
Sure.
To prepare for listing, you need to prepare from the day you start the company. You need to basically have good governance practices. So if people say it's difficult to raise money, it's true, but you have to get the hygiene factors in place, starting with good governance.
How early is too early perhaps to list for an SME?
Today, start today.
Okay.
You want to get listed? Start today.
All right, Mr. Swaminathan. Thank you so much for your time here on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
for coming. All right, that's our show tonight. If you have any feedback for us, do let us know. Here's how you get in touch. leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com is our email ID. You can also get in touch with us on our social media pages. Sunanda_J is my personal Twitter handle. LOT_ET now is our official Twitter handle. Or reach us on our Facebook page. As always, we are at Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Thanks for watching. Have yourselves a good night.